Hello there! In this video, I will be talking about trans issues in relation to the rapid increase of globalization. To start off, let's talk briefly on what is trans. Trans is an umbrella term that refers to all of the identities within the gender identity spectrum beyond the binary. Some of these identities include transgender, multigender, non-binary, and gender fluid. For this discussion, we'll be focusing on transgender primarily. Transgender is an individual whose gender identity does not match the sex they were assigned at birth, to put it simply. Two major issues trans individuals face globally is discrimination and violence. Globally, 72 countries have made same-sex relations illegal, and in 8 of those countries, the death penalty is allowed. Some of these 8 countries include Yemen, Nigeria, Saudi Arabia, and Iran. The types of violence trans individuals face are structural, institutional, societal, and direct. Structural violence is produced and maintained by social structures that have a strong ideology about gender and sexuality that can result in disadvantaging specific individuals in a society. Institutional violence is transphobic behavior reflected in laws, policies, and practices that blatantly discriminates against trans individuals. Societal violence is when others reject and mistreat those that identify as trans, while direct violence is circumstances that lead to hate crimes and anti-trans incidents. Construction, regulation, and imagination are all impacted by globalization in regards to sexuality and trans identity. Currently, globalization is spreading rapidly, and a kind of panic has set in for those that feel their traditional ways are fading away. Thus, there has been an increase of religious fundamentalism and a new idea of U.S. cultural war in Africa, Eastern Europe, and the Caribbean. Globalization has now become a larger force of oppressive influence for those in the trans community. One example are the Hajar of India that had a rich history for 4,000 years. The downfall for these individuals began with British colonization and their views on what was natural and unnatural according to the Criminal Tribes Act 1871. So the Hajar were criminalized and prosecuted. I'd now like to share a video that better explains the Hajar of India. Right now, identity politics are a big part of the LGBT+ movement, as those of an oppressed minority work together to push for equal rights such as employment, adoption, and housing, to name a few. However, this remains local in the sense that these being state issues primarily. Luckily, other groups are working to expose, record, and speak up about the mistreatment of trans individually on a global scale. 2 of these groups are pro-trans and Trans Respect versus Transphobia. These projects are looking into the violence towards trans individuals in countries like Russia, Hungary, Turkey, Georgia, and Germany. Even though this talk is about trans and transgender individuals, all members of the LGBT+ are affected by the changes of Western influence, both bad and good, in other global countries. Additional examples are in Turkey, all LGBT plus events have been banned in accordance to the ruling Justice and Development Party in order to halt the current LGBT plus movement. And in Nigeria, a new online magazine titled A Nasty Boy focuses on questioning the strict gender norms of Nigeria's religious ideology. The magazine documents the lives of young men who cross-dress and wear makeup in order to shed light on those lives that do exist and can no longer go ignored. It is important for everyone's voice to be heard and respected, and not just the last voice in the room, if we all want to take a step forward. This ends my talk. Links to the projects I mentioned and my work site can be found below. Thank you again for clicking on this video.